Hey, heart seekers. Welcome to the Hearts Hello Show, where our hearts are the foundation of our well being and happiness. I am your host, Kiana Telena. Remember how they told you you can tell if spaghetti is done or not, that you can throw it up against the wall and it will stick? Well, I oftentimes think that this is how individuals go through life. They throw some choices and decisions and things up against the wall, and they're hoping, wishing, and praying that something is going to stick. Only then do they realize that those choices that they have thrown up against the wall are now detrimental to what it is that they're looking to do in their life. See, I think that when we choose our path, those random choices that we make often miss the mark. So I want us to get into a mindset that when our actions and decisions are aligned with our heart and soul, not only do they clear the clutter in our lives, they open up the pathways to more meaningful existence. I want us to get to a place where we are not just throwing life up against the wall. We're not just throwing decisions and choices that we have up against the wall in hopes that it's just going to work out. I think that may have been helpful for us, as we were children and teenagers and maybe into our young adulthood. But the majority of us who are listening to my voice, we are dealing with life. We have children, we have spouses, we have careers, we have businesses, we have life happening. And so we can't take the chance of just throwing some random stuff up against the wall and just closing our eyes, opening them, and hoping that something stuck. See, as I share with you all, we're now into season 2. And in this season 2, we're dealing with how we should be operating in the pause. I've shared with you all my story. For those of you all who don't know, life happens all the time. And for me, it was going through a divorce, now having layoff, just having life happen. But one thing that I was just sharing with a friend of mine is that even as life was happening, even through all that we've been through, and that's just a piece of the story, I can talk about having to file bankruptcy. I can talk about having a vehicle repossessed. I can talk about having my credit in the straight garbage, but then also being on the other side of that. See, I oftentimes think that we go through life and we often forget what we have been through, but we realize that we have been in situations before, but things have turned out for the better. And so when we go through things now, we forget that we've been through something before and now on the other side of it. And so what I want us to get comfortable with being okay with is taking time to pause. Every day, there should be some time that you are setting aside to just pause. There should be time within your week that you are setting aside time to pause. In your month, time to pause. And then for those who are just dealing with life and having things that are just happening, and so you have no choice but to pause, I believe that your purpose is found in your pause. I believe that we oftentimes try to speed through these moments in our lives because they don't feel good. But I also believe that if we took time to sit in this pause, that we will find out a little bit more of who we are, who we have been called to be, who we are destined to be. And so this is where I want us to be in a place where we can recognize that we need to sit still in the pause, even when it's not something that is totally traumatic in our lives, but every day you should have some time to just pause. And so I want us to think about, what does that look like in our life? Why do we oftentimes have and go about this path that we choose and just have random choices that we're trying to throw at life, hoping that it's going to work out, and then become baffled when you miss the mark? See, I believe that the older we get, some of the challenges and obstacles that we have, we should not still be having. I believe that there are things and lessons in each misstep that we've had. But oftentimes, when you try to blow through the pause and not deal with you, because that's what happens when you're in a pause. The main person that you should be focusing on is you. What that internal work looks like, what your mindset needs to be, how you need to position your heart posture, how you need to make sure that you are forgiving those that need to be forgiving, how you are making sure that you have a mindset for growth. Because if you take some time to think about how you ended up in the space that you're in, it will help you as you come out of this space. It will prepare and propel you to where you're getting ready to go. So I said that there is purpose in your pause. I believe that you will find your purpose in your pause. I believe that you will find passion in your pause. I believe that you will be rekindled in your pause. But that's only if you take the time to sit with you long enough. So I just want to give us some things that we can do so that we are not just throwing life up against the wall in hopes that it will just stick. You know, I think sometimes that people don't want to sit in this space is because they're fearful. They're fearful of what may come up when you have to deal with you, because sometimes just dealing and sitting with you is so uncomfortable if you are doing it right. Because there should not be a time where you are rushing through this pausing season and you don't sit and deal with you and learn how to be accountable for the actions, decisions, and choices that you have made in life. I know sometimes people don't want to use that word accountability, but you have to, because in order for you to get to your next level, it's not that you need to be accountable to everyone else. And yes, you do need to be, but the person that you truly need to be accountable to is you. Because when you become accountable to you, you are now showing up as the best version of you. You can own whatever it is that may be going on in your life. Yes, other people may have their hands in what may be going on, but you also have to realize that you played a role in it. Whatever your role was, you have to acknowledge that, hey, dang, I did play a role in that part. So I think that when we try to just throw things up against the wall, it's this psychological fear of failure. Wow, couldn't get that out. It's the fear of failure and how that fear of failure can lead to your impulsive decisions. So where people try to do everything without a clear plan, hoping that something will work out, it's the fear that it won't work out. If they sit down and take some time to strategize and put vision to it and put some clarity to it, So if you operate and go about doing things impulsively, then it's, oh, I kind of just went through and I did it this way and I'm hoping that it's going to work out. But you really didn't take the necessary time to sit down and strategize and see if you could potentially prohibit the devastation that will come from your impulsive decision. Sometimes people are just desperate for change. And so again, we're talking about throwing life up against the wall, but then we're also talking about how we're dealing with this pause and not just skirting through it, not just speeding past it, not just treating it like a yellow light, just kind of yielding and going on to the next thing. No, I need us to take some time to sit in it for a minute. So the desperation for change is sometimes your exploration for, and in frustration, your impatience, because you're hoping that the current situation can just push people to seek a quick fix rather than a thoughtful solution. So I'm going slowly because I want us to get to a space where we're not having to talk fast, we're not having to listen fast, but we're being okay with things slowing down. And I also think that people who just kind of throw things up against the wall, it's all about this instant gratification. So we're living in a culture where societal pressures will push you to achieve quick success, leading you to a mindset that prioritizes speed over sustainability. So you can get there quick, fast, in a hurry, but can you sustain that? It's almost like, for those of you all who may be track enthusiasts, it's almost like when you're running a 400. The 400 is going to be different than a quick sprint. So it's going to be different than your 100. And it's going to be different than your 8. Because your 100 is going to be quick, fast, and in a hurry. That 800, you're going to kind of have some time where you can speed up and slow down. But that 400, there needs to be some consistency throughout the race, because that's the only way that you're going to conquer a 400. And I say conquer because that 400 is a beast. Mentally, you have to be able to tell yourself, even though you may see someone, a jackrabbit that took off in front of you that's going extremely fast, can they sustain that speed? Probably not. But if you are consistent in knowing, okay, this is the speed that I need to be at in order to get around this track. And then once you hit that last straightaway, coming into the finish line, you're going to have this additional burst of energy because you have been able to sustain that consistent pace for those first 300 meters. Same thing applies to us in life. Oftentimes we hit the gas and then don't realize, well, dang, I needed to slow down a bit. I needed to speed up a bit. I needed to think about what it is that you need to do in order to do it before you do it. And I've said it before a little differently, to be able to think about what it is that you want before, to see it before you see it in order to see it. Same thing applies. I want us to get to a place where not only are we comfortable in our pause, but even as we are in our pause, we're not just trying to speed through it because it doesn't feel good. Sometimes, I hate to say it, but what doesn't feel good is going to make you stronger. What doesn't feel good reminds you the next time that you want to throw something up against the wall, You remember that misstep. But if you're constantly speeding through your pause, you never take the opportunity to figure out what went wrong so that you don't do that again. Remember, I said it's different when you're a child. You can make mistakes and over again. But once you hit, I don't know, I'm in my 40 club. Once you hit the 40 club, you can't keep making the same mistakes that you've made when you were a child. Those mistakes cost you. They cost you relationships. They cost you money. They cost you time. They could cost you your business. They could cost you your job. So you have to be able to think about things a bit differently when you are older. And so I want us to just get to a place where we're not just throwing stuff up against the wall. We're not just jumping into relationships because this is what you feel like you need right now. What is the long-term effect of that? We're not just taking jobs just because. What is that going to cost you? Think about, is it going to cost you your peace? Is it going to cost you your time? What is it going to cost you? And so if you take that necessary time to figure out what exactly it is that you want, when that door opens, you have the opportunity to either say, this is what I want and move forward, or say, no, this does not align with what I need. But until you sit down with you don't know what it is that you want. You don't know where you've missed the mark before because you're always on the go. And so I need you to slow down. I need you to pause and figure out what your next steps are going to be. It's just like when you're playing chess or checkers. You're paying attention to your opponent. And so for you, your opponent is you. What habits have you seen in yourself? Because most of the time, those same habits, if you have not corrected them, are going to show up again. So let's get real with ourselves. Let's take some time and deal with ourselves. Because those temporary fixes that we can now make and adjust and tweak, they prevent us from having those long-term consequences. So yeah, I get it. Short-term relief is quick, fast, and in a hurry. And it gives us this sense of control and relief because now we don't have to deal with the situation. But what does it cost you? What is the cost of inconsistency? What is the cost of burnout? What is the cost of your lack of true progress? The only thing that it does is erodes your self-confidence, and it creates a cycle of perpetual dissatisfaction. Do you know someone who is always dissatisfied? Always, regardless of when things are going amazingly well in their life, they are never satisfied. They're always trying to get to the next thing and the next thing and the next thing and the next thing, not realizing that they have everything that they need right there. But why is it that they don't see it? Because they just kind of skirt through it. They're just used to just doing life and not living life on purpose, not being moved by their core values. So that short-term relief will cost you, and that long-term detriment and those consequences from maybe missed opportunities or deep personal growth or strained relationships, loss of time, resources, Why? All of those things? Because you haven't sat down with you long enough to figure out that they do not align with your true value of you. That's what we're trying to find. We're trying to be the best version of ourselves. We're trying to show up as the authentic version of ourselves. But if you don't sit with you, if you don't learn from the mistakes that you have already made, you will continue to make those same mistakes over, or missteps that I like to say, over and over again. So I need us to figure out what exactly are our core values, because when we operate from our core values, the things that we're trying to throw up against the wall, life's wall, and hope that they stick so that we can get through this part of our lives, we will realize that what we're trying to get to stick does not stick because it's not in alignment with our core values. So here's a question that you can ask yourself if you're not sure with what your core values may be. What principles do I refuse to compromise on? What are your non-negotiables? When do you feel most fulfilled? Those are just some of the ways that you can begin to develop what your core values are and to recognize what matters the most to you. Because the role of your core values in your decision making is going to make sure that it's aligned with your decisions, your core values, and it leads to a more consistent and meaningful outcome. So even if the progress is slower and requires more effort, you're going to have better success of it doing and being exactly what it is that you need for it to be, because it's in alignment with who you are. So I'm hoping that you all are getting what I'm putting down. Because if you take the time, the necessary time to sit with you, to be okay in the pause, to find your purpose and passion in the pause, and to try to not just skirt through life, throwing things up against the wall, you will begin to live an intentional life. And that's what we are all striving to do. Because the importance of being deliberate in our life choices rather than acting out of impulse or desperation, it helps us to have a better approach on life. It helps us to slow down, and it leads to lasting satisfaction and success. So I'm excited, you all. I'm hoping that you can hear it in my voice. Yes, I've slowed down, but I'm hoping that you can hear in my voice that you're going to have to take the necessary time in order to deal with you each and every day and find moments each and every day to just pause. Set aside that time, even before life starts lifing. Because if you are now being intentional with making sure that you are checking in with you and setting aside that time to pause and reflect on where you are in life and where it is that you want to be able to go when life starts lifing, you've already built in this habit to pause and to slow down and to assess where you are, so that you're not making a mistake or a misstep to move too fast to get to the next thing because you haven't sat with you long enough. So I'm excited, you all. I'm excited for each and every one of you to pause this week. Set aside some time and just pause. And let me know how you feel. Let me know if you just take that time, 5 minutes out of your day, what that looks like daily for you, what that looks like weekly for you, what that looks like monthly for you. if that's a quarterly retreat that you need to be able to have, but every day there should be time for you to pause. So I just want to thank you for joining me for yet another adventure of the Heart's Hello Show, where together we embrace vulnerability, we learn from each other, and we spread love, one heartfelt hello at a time.